Let's talk about Anduril. I want to get to the current state of the business, but what do we know about the funding talks so far?
We know they're happening. Saying something. Anduril is probably the most rumored about company, gossiped about company in the sort of private tech world, aside from aside from OpenAI and Anthropic. And so there's constantly these like funding rumors about them. And my colleagues Kitty Ruth, Felita Powell, and I actually nailed down that they are starting to happen. Anduril is going to raise billions of dollars yet again, and the valuation that they're talking about is in the $60 billion range, which is roughly double the price from last year.
So $60 billion. Help us understand what is Anduril's product portfolio right now? Where are they making most of their money? Where are they going? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's expanded a lot in recent years. They've uh, got a couple massive contracts in different ways. One is they bought a company that sells autonomous submarines, and they won a multi-billion-dollar contract from the Australian Navy to deploy that. They've also taken over close to $20 billion contract from Microsoft for mixed reality headsets for soldiers. And they have a litany of other products, counter drone technology, drones themselves, solid rocket motors. So this is a company that, if you've stopped paying attention to them in recent years, has really expanded their product set. But the customers are still, essentially uh, sort of the military agencies for the U.S. Homeland Security, as well as allied nations.
And who are the legacy players here that Anduril is hoping to take business from?
Yeah, the legacy players are, so the largest defense contractor in the US is RTX, formerly known as Raytheon. There's sort of these large prime contractors: Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, General Dynamics. These are, sort of decades old prime contractors that sell, sort of all the weapon systems into the government. And it's really been essentially, Anduril is saying, look, this has been this closed club of a handful of large companies that were founded decades or centuries ago. We want to join that club. We don't think this should be as closed off of a system anymore. And that's sort of what they've been inching toward year by year. It takes a while. They're much smaller than those larger companies, but they are growing much, much faster.
I want to ask you a little bit about the regulatory environment for these types of companies. I mean, under the current administration, it seems like there has been a lot of conversation that it'll be easy for these companies to grow. And the question I have is, I mean, do you foresee this changing at all? If the administration changes a couple years from now, would the prospects for Anduril change down the road? Is this sort of a moment where they have to raise as much money as they can for the next couple of years because it's uncertain? Or do you sort of, from what you hear from people, I mean, is this sort of a more secular shift in the way, where Silicon Valley is headed, where they see money flowing, where they think they can get returns from? How are they thinking about it?
I gotta do the annoying reporter thing and say it's a little bit of both. Uh, Look, this company was founded under the first Trump administration. It grew significantly under the Biden administration, and so it has grown and been successful under two different sort of political regimes. I think what I'm seeing across defense tech and national security, and anything really touching the government, is folks that see a clear path to winning a lot more government business during this Trump administration, whether it's just because they know the right people in the right places, which is a tale as old as time in politics. This administration is particularly rewarding to those people. They want to grab as much land, as much territory, as many dollars as they can. It really does feel a bit like a land grab sort of situation, where this is a moment to take advantage of. The stars are aligning. I will say there's obviously nuance and caveats to that. Like, obviously, an administration is not uniform. It is not full of the same people thinking the same way. You do have obviously like tensions within, sort of the national security regime around how large of contracts do we give new upstarts in, coming out of Silicon Valley, like Anduril. And I think a big sort of moment we're going to see is whether the U.S. Air Force sort of awards Anduril sort of its very lucrative autonomous fighter jet program, which it's in the running for. I think whether it wins that, fully or, gets a huge chunk of that will be, a really big, interesting sign to watch.
Last question for you, Corey. I mean, you have covered so many different pockets of Silicon Valley. Some of the earlier reporting into the information was the ride-hailing companies, the Airbnbs. Now we're in this era of defense. I mean, what are the questions that come to mind for you as it relates to this company? y- you know, as a Silicon Valley darling in some ways. I mean, in some ways they're all the same, but defense is such a different category. I mean, I wonder how you're thinking about reporting questions as a reporter.
As a reporter, I am humble in what I don't know, and what we don't know a lot right now is like the more specific numbers inside of Anduril's business. Um, we've reported pretty heavy cash burn over the last year. I mean, this company's never been close to profitable, and that's by design. And I think what can sneak up on us reporters and also folks in the valley is, how quickly a business model can switch, can kind of flip into place where all of a sudden they have sort of really profitable unit economics. They're winning a ton of programs. They kind of go from this position of looking like, are they ever going to make a cent on their business to actually being able to lock in a pretty sticky customer base and make a ton of money. And I think where will Anduril make that flip? I think you saw it with SpaceX. You obviously saw it with companies like Uber, where everyone was talking about, will they ever make money? And they've been a pretty dominant story in recent years. So that's always, I think, kind of an emanating question around our reporting is, sort of what does the business actually look like, and is the more important story for them, how much power they've amassed, or is the more important story, are they actually going to make it as a business?
Right. Well, Corey, I want to thank you for coming on. That was Corey Weinberg, our Deputy Bureau Chief of Finance here at The Information.